from Paris. This is Kimberly Wilson of Tranquility du Jour and the lovely Miss Belle Star. And this is a bit spontaneous, so I appreciate any of you who are able to joining, and others can watch this later. But I just wanted to give a quick hello and a little shout out from Paris, and to show a little bit of the Paris apartment that we're in, which is like so exciting. And it just feels really good to be here in the city and in our own place. You know, actually have a key, which is a skeleton key that we used to get in. I will confess it took us many tries. One point we were standing outside for 15 minutes trying to figure out how to work the skeleton key. But anyway, we finally figured it out and we're all settled. The funny thing is though, so you see the window is opened and it is 90 some odd degrees today. And yet, there's no air conditioning in here because, you know, this is a heat wave. It was completely unexpected. I checked the weather like a week before we came, and the 10-day forecast was like 70s, low 80s. And yet it's 90, and it looks like it may even be going up to like the higher 90s over the next 2 days. Anyway, we're fine. We have a fan. All is good. And I will say we have a new pet. I haven't seen him for a few days. But it was funny, the first night I was a bit jet lagged. I was sleeping or trying to sleep and I heard this noise like this, I thought it was rain maybe, because the roof here is completely not insulated and it's the sunshine pouring in constantly. But it's really great because it's just glass. It's an old atelier, I think is what they say, and it's like a design studio or a painting studio. It's where painters would live. And so anyway, I heard that and I thought, oh, it's raining. And then I'm like, I don't think that's rain. So I look over at our baguette, and you know, the baguettes usually come in like a little bit of a paper sort of covering, and there's a little gray mouse, a smoky colored mouse, chewing on the paper to get into the baguette. So I've named him Francois. So we have a new pet named Francois, and I haven't seen him for a few days, but I'm really excited about him. And he's actually really cute. I don't know if Paris mice are different than DC, and sadly I don't get to see DC mice. I just see DC rats, which are cute too. But anyway, he's so darling. So Francois is our new friend, and Belle's been doing really great. Of course, like a little challenged with the heat, because you know, she thinks it's hot at about 75 or 80, so 90's like a whole new world. So I also wanted to share just a few things about like, okay, what's been going on here? What have we been doing? And hopefully you've been able to follow along a little bit on Instagram. I've been trying to share a little bit of what we've been up to, and I'll say the first 2 days it was a lot of acclimating to, okay, what time zone are we in? Where are we? You know, it takes a while. I think I'm just hypersensitive to it, but it took me a few days to really settle in. But what we would do throughout the day is we would wander to some of those cafes that I mentioned in the Savvy Sources that went out in the past 2 love notes and were over on the blog. And then also, because there were cafes, some really cute cafes. I think Belle's done with me. You want to go back to Daddy? All right, thanks for saying hello, honey. She's like, where's Daddy? But some really cute cafes, one that had wisteria all over the walls, and then a lot of vegan restaurants. We got to 2 that were listed in the resources that I sent out. Gentle Gourmet, which is like super fancy. I'll share some photos from that experience. It was amazing, like super high-end vegan. And then Veg Arts, which was super duper kind of chill, a tiny little place, tiny, and had vegan pizza, which like I was so excited about. So we went over there, and those were all over on the right bank. And another thing, last night we went to Les Greniers de Notre Dame, and that's actually a place that I discovered in 2009. They have spaghetti. It's like one of my favorite things. So we had that last night, and now they actually have a lot of vegan options. So they had spaghetti bolognese, but vegan style, and they even had 3 vegan desserts, which is hard to come by. So I was so excited. So I'll share a little bit kind of later. I'll probably do a blog post on like how to stay veg while you're in Paris, which, you know, can be quite challenging sometimes for people. And then also we've had a few gluten-free ladies who are on retreat with us, and they've actually been able to do just fine. So it's nice to see that things are changing, because honestly, whenever we first came in and we went out to check out just like the cafes nearby to see like, oh, should we grab a bite? Can we stay up past 5 p.m. before we're ready for bed? And this little cafe, sidewalk cafe, on the big menu out front, it said for 100%, I thought that was funny, 100% vegan options. And one was a veggie burger with french fries, because that's really my thing. I love me some french fries. The frites here are amazing. So I was able to get a veggie burger and pommes frites here as my first meal. I have never, ever seen vegan options listed on your average cafe menu. So that was it's really exciting. And then, of course, you can still indulge in all the glacé. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but ice cream, because of course the sorbets are dairy-free. So today we went to lunch at La Durée. That was one of the treats for the ladies on retreat. And I was able to get a dessert, which was this amazing raspberry sorbet. So really, really yummy. So it's been a very sweet experience, despite sometimes, trying to sort out, okay, like how do we get gluten-free? How do we get vegan? How do we get veg, etc. It's been much easier this time to navigate in the city. And I have to say, even easier than it was 6 months ago when we were here over the holidays. So just a little bit, and I have little notes here, so I'm looking down just as a reminder of kind of like what have we done so far. So those were like the first 2 days, the settling in, the hitting all the restaurants and cafes that I possibly could that were new to me, or some beloved ones like W.H. Smith and Shakespeare and Company, my 2 favorite English bookstores. But what's funny, I have to say, so there's this W.H. Smith now has a little tea salon upstairs. And so I sit down and I have this really yummy rose black tea. I'm really excited. And I turn behind me and there's this stack of books. I thought, oh, I'll just kind of thumb through and see what's there. I read the saddest book in my entire life. It's called Goodbye Mousie. And it's a children's book, but I think it's for children to help them with dealing with the loss of their pet. So I'm like in this cafe, like with tears streaming down, and Tim's like, dear God, like why? Put it away. I knew when you picked it up and we saw the cover that it was not going to be pretty. But anyway, it's the sweetest, sweetest book. So if you have any children in your life that have pets or have lost a pet, it's a really, really sweet book. But it's the saddest book I've ever read. So then on Monday, the ladies arrived, and so we met them at the hotel, and then we hopped on the bus and headed over to the Eiffel Tower to have a picnic and our first kind of writing exercise. And it was really more about intention setting, what do you want out of the retreat, and then this is a really important piece, not just what do you want out of the retreat, but how will you know if you've gotten that out at the end? Because, right, sometimes it can be like, oh, I want to be present, right? And it's like, okay, well, how will you know if you've been present? I wasn't on my phone constantly, or, whatever it might be. So that's always like a sweet thing to just check in with people about, like, what's your intention for being here? Then from there, we headed over to hear Nick Reynolds, who is a friend of mine, speak on his book that came out last year about Hemingway as a spy, and it turned into a bestseller. And I didn't know when it turned into a bestseller, but he said within a week of it coming out. Just amazing. Because he's such like a humble, sweet man, like former Marine, worked CIA, and then wrote this amazing book. And honestly, that's why we're here this week, is because it's the Hemingway conference, and Nick was going to be here and he was going to be speaking at the conference. But pretty early on, he let us know that it was going to actually be a very short talk and super expensive. So he was like, if you want, I can just come and talk to your group. So I was like, oh, that's amazing. So we got like this private talk with Nick on Monday. Then we did the champagne cruise on the Seine, which was just like lovely. And Tim had 6 glasses of champagne. Why? Oh, 6.5.
Because somebody said they weren't going to drink theirs, and I said, okay.
We didn't want it to go to waste. So he became, what do I call you, our depository?
Yeah.
Yeah. Water out of a wine glass, because that's what you must do in Paris. And yeah, so that was funny. But by the end, it was like 1 glass in, and they were pretty hearty pours. And I'm like, I feel a little funny. And Tim's like, oh no. So anyways, I know. So that was Monday. And then Tuesday, we had a 3-hour literary tour, wandering the city to see different places where Hemingway lived, Gertrude Stein lived, where Hemingway used to pray. So it was just this like really cool experience. Oh, the very first, the original Shakespeare and Company, kind of where that was set up, and just heard so much history from this wonderful guide named Olga. And if you guys are ever coming to the city and you want to do a literary tour, I'm happy to put you in touch with her because she was really, really good. And then after that, we were all cooked because it was like 3 hours of walking, and then the sun came out at one point where it was like, oh, and like super intense. So we came back and just kind of chilled. And then that evening, we met up in the Tuileries for a writing workshop, and then we did yoga in the Tuileries. There's this one little section kind of towards the Louvre where you can actually get on the grass. So it was so nice, and the sun was setting, and it was like this really kind of pink sky. And it's funny, while they were in Shavasana, there was this huge flurry and like fluttering of birds kind of flying over them. And I was like, oh, it's too bad their eyes aren't open. It's so beautiful to see, but I don't want to disrupt them because they're in Shavasana. And then a few of them were like, oh my gosh, did you see the birds? They were totally peeking. But I think it'd be hard not to hear like the fluttering. It was just so, so beautiful. And I put a couple photos up on Instagram from that experience, and you could kind of get a taste of the pink sky, but not fully, right? It's not the full thing of actually having seen it. Because it's so nice, you know, the sun sets, I mean, here, what time is it? It's like 8:40.
8:40 p.m.
Right, so it's like, you know, the sun won't set for another hour. And so it's just beautiful to kind of watch the light change with all of that. It's just really, really sweet. So the next two, we have 2 more days of retreating. We've got yoga and writing tomorrow in Luxembourg Garden. And tomorrow night's a little surprise. And the ladies are going to come over. We're going to have a little tapas, French tapas, and then we're going to hear from Janice McLeod, who wrote this amazing book, Paris Letters. And then from there, we have a little surprise on what we're going to be doing. And then Friday, we have our wrap-up, our finale, which is just crazy. It goes so fast. And then Tim and I are hosting a few people for dinner on Saturday, and then we fly home Sunday. So it goes quickly. So that's kind of our journey so far. I also wanted to show you the one thing I have purchased that has not been, you know, gifts for the ladies or, you know, consumable like a baguette, is this beautiful candle. So I'm obsessed with the rose scent. And this is Petal. I am so probably not pronouncing it right, Day Rose. But I just wanted to show you the packaging. I haven't lit it yet. I'm like so excited. But isn't this just beautiful? And it just smells phenomenal. I may have to get a second one before we leave. So, and of course it's made in France. It's just so, so lovely. And there's a home goods store just down the road from where we're staying. And I meant to tell you, where are we staying? So we're on the 14th. And if you guys know Montparnasse, we're down, gosh, about a 15, 20-minute walk from Montparnasse, so down. It's about a 40-minute walk to the hotel where we have the ladies stay, and that is at right off of Luxembourg Garden. So that just kind of gives an idea of where we are. And anyway, home goods store, I'm so excited I might need another, because it makes me think of this store, and we stopped in one today. Some of the ladies were really excited, wanted to stop into Au Nom de la Rose. And so this is rose perfume that I picked up there last year. The one we went into didn't have it. They tend to have like just certain things, but you know, like dark chocolate with rose, which is like the sweetest gift. I love taking those back for people. Rose syrups, you can add little rose infusion to your water, and you know, little rose crystallized candies, perfume, candles, things along those lines. And then of course, you know, the other thing that I brought is the perfume that I made here in Paris that Tim beautifully packages by peeling off rose petals from little buds and putting them into this.
All by hand, people.
All by hand, all hand done. He's like the chemist for this. So we bought the formula. After I created it, we bought the formula here in Paris and then brought it back. And those of you in Year of Tranquility, you got a sampling of this in your goodie bags recently. So I hope you liked it. And let's see, a couple other things I wanted to share. Oh, was writing prompts from this, or just little pieces that I found quite insightful that I've been sharing with the ladies this week, and I thought you may too, because one of the things that's coming up for people and tends to come up when you're in Paris, despite the fact you want to see everything while you're here, there's so much to see, is this idea of really slowing down, calming down, becoming more reflective, right? Because we're out of our day-to-day get up, feed the kids, make sure everyone's out the door, you know, all of that. It's like all we have to do is really focus on ourselves. And, you know, that can be a really sweet gift that we give ourselves. And so with that, and what I love about this book is she even says, one woman's journey from the fast lane to a slow stroll in Paris. And I'll read to you a couple passages from this that I think are quite profound. And Janice, if you don't know, she's been on my podcast twice over at Tranquility Du Jour, and she's just absolutely lovely. And so if you haven't listened to those, I think you might find them insightful, because she wrote Paris Letters a few years ago, and then she wrote A Paris Year. Oh, and if you have any questions that you'd like me to ask Janice during our talk tomorrow, I'd be happy to ask her and share the information with you. She's really, really lovely. So if you don't follow Janice, I encourage you to. Okay, so the first thing is really about this idea of slowing down. She says, why the boasting about being either busy or tired, but never about being happy? Oh, that old, busy, overwhelmed version of myself. I wish I could go back and tell her to calm down, slow down, and find joy in the moment. Was it me being clueless, or was I steeped in an environment addicted to busy and tired? In Paris, I was in an environment that worshipped slow and delicious. I love that word. And quickly, slow is becoming my preferred mode. Isn't that beautiful? And I love the word delicious too, that worship slow and delicious. Because that's one of the things Tim and I have noticed, like, you know, in DC at least, if you get behind someone, particularly a tourist, you know, who's used to walking slower and we walk quite fast, get so frustrated, you know, as if like they're supposed to have eyes in the back of the head and know that we're coming fast behind them. And yet I've noticed here that people aren't like that, despite people, of course, you know, being in a hurry from time to time, but there is a slower stroll and there's not that sense of impatience. So I've tried to pull that in a little bit, but it's funny how it's hard to shift that when it's so ingrained. And so I really like this piece too about shifting your environment and how helpful that can be. And that's one of the things we've talked about in the group and that I really encourage within my work is sometimes, you know, we get so stale and stagnant in everyday life and our kind of all of the things we have going on that it can be nice to step away and almost like have a bird's eye view of what's going on. One of the exercises too that I had the ladies do today that I find to be a really helpful exercise is to write a story that typically ideally has a little conflict in it. You know, it could even be like today, we showed up at La Durée, 10 people, and I had a reservation, but they said I didn't. So, you know, in that moment, that's conflict, right? And the fact that you're like, okay, we have 10 people along a staircase that is not air conditioned, waiting to eat lunch. You know, 9 hungry Americans, one lovely lady from Scotland. And I thought, this is not going to be good. And so, you know, there's this like little bit of conflict. And I showed him the receipt that we had a reservation. And within 15 minutes, he made space for us. But, you know, in those moments, there's a little bit of conflict, right? Like, what's going on? What are we going to do? What if he doesn't seat us? And so writing a short story, just like a little blurb, something that takes you 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20, in the first person about like your experience. So me as I showing up at La Durée, you know, getting the ladies all excited about this amazing experience and then being told no. And then the other thing is then the second time go back, write the same story, not verbatim, but the same story from the third person and just see what the shift is. Because what's really interesting sometimes when we shift from I to we have a completely different experience, or excuse me, from I to she. We have a completely different experience because it feels a little depersonalized and we see so much more. We see more richness, more details, etc. So just an interesting exercise for those of you who may be interested, you know, with regard to writing and the shifting of environment and really looking at things from the first person and the third person. And just to see, like, does that make my writing come alive a bit more? And then the last thing I want to read to you, and then I will let you be, because I know a lot of you from the States, of course, you're in the middle of your workday. So thank you so much for joining me at this like random hour. We just had to do it before it was like before the daylight left. And while you guys were like awake, and then also the next 2 nights we are with people. We have guests or we'll be out, so I wasn't going to be able to do it. So I'm so glad you guys were able to tune in on such short notice because I wanted to try to do something from Paris for you. Okay, so this piece I think is really, really great, and it's about this idea of being an artist. So she says, write to learn what you know. All right, so we probably are all familiar with the beautiful Joan Didion quote that says, I write in order to figure out what I'm thinking or what I think. So she says, write to learn what you know. And what did I need to know? I needed to realize I was an artist, not the one who paints letters about Paris. She does these beautiful Paris letters. The artist who is the head honcho creative director of her own life. We must know how to design our lives. We are all artists, and each day is a canvas. Writing in my journal each day was how I redesigned my life. I became conscious of just how much I disliked my day-to-day existence. I would get up, react, and repeat. I had created a fast, busy, messy life. There was no one else to blame. I designed it, tried it, didn't like it, and had to erase and redesign. But I didn't know I had to erase and redesign until I carved out a container of time to write every day. Finding the time was challenging. Sometimes I stole time during office hours to write. Sometimes I lied to friends saying I was busy so I could stay home and write. I did whatever I had to do to be with my practice. At first I felt guilty about this, but eventually I began to make it a priority. I insisted on it, even at the expense of a few billable hours or hurt feelings of friends. So I love this. I just think it's such a great reminder on the power and the importance of writing, and then also the importance of practice, which again is something that we're talking about right now in Year of Tranquility whenever we speak about yoga and the importance of practice. So whatever your practice is, or whatever you want your practice to be, carving out time for that, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, is such a powerful, powerful and important experience. And then two, kind of closing, I just wanted to show you, so behind, we actually happen to be staying in a fashion designer's place. And it's so cool because you can probably see there's like the mannequins. Here's another mannequin and this huge mirror. And then she's got these two, I don't know if you can see, but kind of vintage, or one vintage sewing machine that is behind me. Isn't this beautiful? So it's just a really, really sweet space. And again, it's called an atelier. Again, may not be pronouncing it right, but it's A-T, I think I-E-L-E-R. So this is the second one that I've stayed in Paris, and it's loft style. So upstairs, but you do not want to go upstairs because it's hot. Again, because the ceiling is glass, which is so cool, probably for painting and all sorts of design. But, it's a little hot for us Americans. And then so there's a bathroom upstairs, there's a bedroom, and then another bed. And then we're staying on the kind of the pull-out bed down here, where I swear it's probably, what would you say, Tim, 15 degrees cooler?
At least probably 20 degrees
Maybe
cooler.
20 degrees cooler, right? So anyway, it's just a really cool space, and I find that they're in great neighborhoods. The last one I stayed in was in Montparnasse, and again, this one, I don't know what you'd call this neighborhood, but it's quite south, a bit south of Montparnasse. But it's really cool too, because you go through an apartment building, and then you go out the back. So this is a long alley, and then there's all these kind of private gardens that lead into these ateliers. Anyway, so very, very cool space. And as you see, I did pick up peonies the first day I was here. I was so excited, and they've pretty much lost it. They're pretty much done, so we'll have to pick up some fresh ones. But it's crazy. This whole little bundle was 10 euros, and back in the States, like something like this, at least when I get them in Whole Foods, whenever they're in stock during like December and May, something like this is $15, and there's usually like 4, and I guess there's like 6 here. So anyway, it was just so sweet. And you see, he wrapped them up. He put in all this greenery, and then he wrapped them in raffia. So just really, like, the presentation here is amazing. It means so much to me because I'm such like a nerd for detail. I like doilies on my plate, things along those lines. So I think that's why I so appreciate Paris, is all this attention to detail. So thank you for kind of traveling along with us here. And if you have any questions that you're curious about with regard to Paris, please let me know. I was thinking, Tim has suggested this for 2 years now, and I'm thinking it's time, but to write like a Tranquility du Jour guide to Paris, and not like, oh, here's the Eiffel Tower and how you get a ticket, but more along the lines of, oh, that's Bella. I was like, is that Francois?
No.
Francois does not come out until midnight. But you know, more along the lines of like, oh, where can you go to a great vintage shop and get a wonderful vintage scarf? You know, things along those lines that are more a little bit off the beaten path. So if that's something you'd be interested in, let me know, because I think that it would be a fun, just a little PDF or a little tiny ebook to create. And particularly now that I found all these wonderful vegan spots that I'm so excited about. So again, thank you so much for being here. Remember this idea of creating and being the head honcho creative director of your own life. And how would that look different than it is? Because this piece, again, really spoke to me, this idea of I would get up, react, and repeat. I had created a fast, busy, messy life. There was no one else to blame. I designed it, tried it, didn't like it, and had to erase and redesign. And so it doesn't mean to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? But just to think about what would a redesign look like for you if you had more time and space for creativity, even 5 minutes a day. All right, so thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being part of Tranquility du Jour. Sorry I couldn't respond to the comments because I can't see them from where the phone is, but I will go in and do so. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And thank you so much for being here tonight. Have a great, great rest of your day.